Discover 2 amazing transformative sleep tales, hidden Greek myths revealed for incredible dreams. Sarah stood in the break room, half-heartedly sipping the dregs of her coffee. The hospital's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, reflecting the weariness in her bones. A single mother, working the grueling night shift as a nurse, she felt invisible in the sea of ambition surrounding her. Newly graduated nurses floated through hallways with a confidence she once possessed, but years of fatigue had dulled her spirit. Promotions never came her way, and as she watched younger colleagues rise with ease, she often wondered what magic they held. This night was particularly exhausting, her patience drained from managing demanding patients while juggling her children's needs in her mind. She pictured their faces, bright yet weary, waiting for her at home, the weight of bills anchoring her heart. Just yesterday, she had balanced the last grocery bag on her hip while searching for change to pay the cashier, guilt gnawing at her. How could she give them everything they deserved when it felt like she was stuck in a rut? As she climbed the creaky steps to the attic of her grandmother's home, Sarah's body ached, but inside, she felt a flicker of something more. Dust motes danced in the air as she uncovered an old book, its leather cover cracked and worn. Opening it, she found herself enraptured by tales of Greek myths, particularly drawn to Pandora's story of hope and Psyche's strength. Beneath layers of dust lay inspiration that mirrored her own struggle. Each page whispered to her, igniting a flicker of determination, urging her to reclaim the vigor she felt slipping away. Days passed, and the stories infused her spirit. She became more assertive, advocating for herself at work, sharing bits of the mythology with her children as they curled up at night, and their sleepy eyes lit with wonder. Yet, amid her personal renaissance, a dark shadow threatened her newfound courage. A rumor spread about Claire, a diligent nurse whose quiet resolve mirrored Sarah's. Colleagues pointed fingers, weaving tales that risked tainting Claire's reputation, and Sarah found herself at a moral crossroads. To remain silent was to protect her fragile position in the hospital. But the air thickened with turmoil as she wrestled with her conscience. Was it right to stand by while a dedicated soul faced ruin? Taking a breath, Sarah felt the weight of her choice. Would she risk backlash in a world that already felt hostile, where each day felt like a precarious balancing act, or would she let justice prevail? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Caught in that moment, she felt her heart race as she imagined her children's expectations, their hopes woven into her uncertain choices. Would they respect her choice to protect Claire, or would it lead to regret? The faces of her ancestors flashed before her, shadows murmuring encouragement. Yet, silence felt safe like a balm against the chaos of loss. The room felt suffocating, muscle tension coiling tightly as she weighed her decision. The pulse of urgency quickened within her. Could she remain true to herself while safeguarding her future? As she stood there, she realized that time itself seemed to freeze, the silence around her amplifying the reckoning she faced, echoing the struggle between personal ambition and the loyalty of friendship. What would she choose, wearing the cloak of one who seeks not just survival, but meaning? Sarah stood alone in her dimly lit kitchen, the soft echoes of her children's laughter still ringing in her ears from earlier that evening. The shadows in the room felt heavy, reflecting the turmoil churning within her. She could almost hear the stories of hope from the book she had unearthed, messages urging her to embrace courage, yet the reality of her decision loomed larger than any fairy tale. Every moment spent in silence only deepened her isolation. Claire needed her. A friend deserving of support in a world that could swiftly turn hostile. The insidious gossip, thinly veiled beneath friendly chatter, had roots deep enough to strangle Claire's reputation. The way Sarah saw it, the manager's ears would be tightly attuned to the plausible deniability of criticism. She, too, knew how quickly a whisper in the right ear could alter careers permanently. This was the visceral understanding of an environment where collective ambition danced alongside backroom slander, yet something had shifted in Sarah. The tales of Psyche overcoming her trials reminded her that strength often emerged from vulnerability. Embracing uncertainty could catalyze change, if only she had the fortitude to act on it. The duality of her situation clawed at her as she paced the small confines of her kitchen, the nurturing mother and the career woman grappling with ethical dimensions. The clock ticked loudly, an ever-present reminder that time slipped away. She began jotting down thoughts on a crumpled napkin, forming the outline of a plan. Would it be feasible to confront the rumor head-on? To lay bare the truth before it could spread any further? The idea felt empowering but terrifying. Offering her voice to the matter risked everything, the meager security she had fought so hard to maintain, but how could she explain this to her children? Mama did what was easy, wouldn't be a tale they could admire. She envisioned their little eyes wide with disappointment, realizing that they might associate their own courage with her cowardice. Each heartbeat surged with clarity. She needed to speak out. With a new sense of resolve anchoring her, Sarah picked up her phone, fingers trembling slightly as she sought Claire's number. Her heart raced at the prospect. This was no longer about just a friend, but about what she was willing to stand for. Each ring felt like an eternity, but when Claire answered, something inside her clicked into place. "Hey, Claire, it's me," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I want to talk about the rumors. We need to clear the air." The silence on the other end was punctuated by Claire's hesitant intake of breath, a sound that expressed both gratitude and concern. Their conversation unfurled into a thoughtful discourse about confronting gossip and the courage it would take to stand against it. As they spoke, Sarah felt herself evolving, reshaping her identity from passive observer to active participant in both her life and Claire's journey. The dialogue became more than just a strategy, it imbued her with purpose. By the end, both women were fortified by the truth they would soon reveal together. The sensation of empowerment coursed through Sarah, her spirit reignited in a way she hadn't anticipated. Yet, a lingering anxiety remained. How would their colleagues react? Would they face backlash, or would they find solidarity in their shared act of resilience? Standing in her kitchen with the lights flickering around her, Sarah realized she was on the brink of something monumental, not merely for Claire, but for herself. The winds of change had begun to stir, and she was determined to be swept up in them. And now, as her choices danced at the intersection of ambition and ethics, she couldn't help but wonder what awaited them, or rather, her on the rocky path ahead. Would she stand firm when the storm of judgment descended, or would she falter? The moment for confrontation loomed ever closer, and the stakes had never felt higher. The morning light filtered through Sarah's kitchen window, illuminating the remnants of last night's unrest. The air was thick with the heady fragrance of brewing coffee, yet the familiar scent barely registered in her subconscious. Sarah sipped her cup slowly, her fingers curling tightly around the warmth, grounding her thoughts before she entered the office. Today wouldn't be just another day. Today, she would confront the very fabric of her workplace dynamic. As she readied herself, apprehension simmered beneath her resolve. Every glance in the mirror met her with the lingering question, who would she be after today? Arriving at the office, a wave of familiar faces greeted her, some friendly, others a mix of indifference and curiosity. Sarah's heart fluttered at the prospect of unveiling the truth, but the chill of fear gripped her throat as she navigated the office corridors. The whispers, the pointed looks, she could feel them even before stepping into the meeting room reserved for the confrontation. It was as if the space itself crackled with the weight of anticipation. Would it bear witness to courage or another tale of succumbing to silence? Gathering her breath, she mentally rehearsed what she had crafted with Claire the night before, a list of observations, valid points echoing the need for ethics over falsehoods. Yet, would the resonance of their combined experiences be enough to rise above the noise? Doubt crept in. Did she truly have the fortitude to stand up in front of their colleagues and deliver the message that needed to be heard? The meeting commenced, the room filled with an uneasy buzz. Sarah's colleagues shifted in their seats, eyes darting back and forth. It was time. In that instant, her heart surged with a mix of adrenaline and dread. She caught Claire's eye, a source of silent encouragement that pushed her forward. "Thank you all for coming," Sarah began, her voice steadier than she imagined it would be. I want to address the rumors circulating about Claire. It's imperative we clarify the situation instead of allowing baseless gossip to dictate our professional relationships." A ripple of surprise flowed through the room, followed by an antagonistic laugh from Nathan, the most tenured manager. "You really think anyone cares about that drama?" he scoffed, folding his arms defensively. "People talk, it's just office life." In that moment, Sarah's composure wavered. Their reaction felt like an immediate dismissal, a reminder of the ruthless culture that thrived on silence and compliance. She glanced at Claire, who nodded slightly, urging her to continue. The shift in dynamics laid bare the reality she had hoped to avoid: standing up would only draw fire. Yet, something inside Sarah ignited, fueled by the belief that she, too, was part of a narrative larger than mere self-interest. "Maybe that's the problem," she replied, her voice gaining clarity. "Maybe we should care. This isn't just about Claire, it's about what kind of environment we want to foster here. Silence in the face of wrongdoing isn't strength, it's complicity." For a moment, the room was suspended in shock. It felt as if time had stopped, every eye turned towards her. The confrontation had moved beyond personal defense, it had transformed into a proclamation, a call for collective ethics. Sarah felt the gravity of her words. They held power, a power she had long suppressed, but with this new direction came risks. Would they truly listen, or would hostility deepen as a mere consequence of her bravery? As nervous murmurs began to swirl, soft at first before rising like a chorus of discord, Sarah's heart raced. With rising courage, she prepared to navigate the inevitable backlash, reminding herself of her purpose and the potential for empowerment beyond this moment. The stakes had risen dramatically, and as she faced not only her antagonists but a transformed version of herself, she recognized the pivotal role this day would play in defining her professional narrative. What would she unleash in the pulse of this challenge? How many more secrets lay hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered when moral conviction met corporate reality? The storm was just beginning, and Sarah stood at its center. The murmurings in the room split the air like sharp knives, slicing through the tension that enveloped Sarah. She could feel the grappling emotions ricocheting off the walls: the disbelief in Nathan's scoff, the confusion among her peers, the tentative stirrings of support buried beneath layers of pragmatism. Each reaction weighed heavy on her, and for an instant, the empowering flame within her flickered against the suffocating darkness of fear. "Are you sure this is the hill you want to die on, Sarah?" Nathan cocked an eyebrow, an undercurrent of challenge lacing his voice. "I'm not trying to die on any hill, Nathan," she replied, her voice firmer now, fueled by an emerging sense of agency. "I'm simply asking that we consider the implications of our inaction. We can choose to support each other or perpetuate the fear." Forcing herself to maintain eye contact, she scanned the room, noting the way several additional faces took on a contemplative expression. The stirring seeds of change could be taking root. In that moment, with the heat of defiance coursing through her veins, Sarah dared to hope, yet, the anticipated retaliation loomed large. Nathan's reputation as a man unafraid to employ aggressive tactics weighed on everyone's minds. As her colleagues began to exchange cautious glances, Sarah felt the uncertainty shift into palpable tension. Did her colleagues recognize the danger in remaining silent, or would they allow the safety of complacency to guide their choices? "Maybe we should just stick to our work and leave the gossip alone," piped up Jenna, steadfastly avoiding Sarah's gaze. The fear in her tone only underscored the environment of hesitation and vulnerability that pervaded the office. The question of resilience loomed large. Could Sarah push through, even if it meant alienating herself from her coworkers? In confronting Nathan and the silence that trembled like a shadow around her colleagues, she was also confronting her own insecurities. "Sticking to our work isn't an option when the workplace atmosphere is toxic," she countered, her determination hardening. "We owe it to ourselves and to those who come after us to set a standard for honesty and integrity." As the conversation continued, she could sense the dynamics pivoting subtly, the conflict swirling around her evolving into a call for personal reflection. Some members of the team had begun to weigh their own complicity in the silent narrative, considering whether they were participants in the disarray of their culture or the catalysts for change they said they wanted to be. Sarah seized the moment. This isn't solely about saving Claire's reputation, it's about nurturing a space where we don't have to hide behind office politics. We deserve trust in our professional lives, and that begins with all of us standing up against the culture of fear. With each word, her confidence burgeoned. The passion for change she had suppressed began transforming into a clearer vision of future possibilities. She had always been told to blend in, to stay beneath the radar. But now she recognized that standing out while uncomfortable was an essential step toward personal growth. Yet, the clock ticked, and the immediate threat loomed large. How far could she push before facing backlash from Nathan? Exposing her vulnerability in this room could untangle the web of fear that had ensnared her colleagues, but it could also ignite opposition she was unequipped to handle. As Sarah felt this clash within her rise to a peak, she realized she was truly reaching beyond the surface for transformation, not just for her sake, but for everyone's. The meeting room's energy shifted, her hesitations felt lighter, even as darker possibilities floated through her mind. She could suddenly envision herself leading change, a voice amplified above the whispers of conformity. Would they stand with her, or would they let the impending storm sweep them back into silence? It was time to probe deeper, to lay bare the courage of the entire team. The divide formed in front of her, self-interest on one side, unity on the other, like a chasm controlled by the slightest push. "Are you with me?" she asked everyone present, her voice a beacon not just for a call to action, but an invitation into a new narrative, one that promised growth and vulnerability. In that charged moment, the answer would shape everything. Would this boldly vulnerable appeal be met with solidarity, or would she end up standing bravely alone? As Sarah awaited their response, a realization washed over her. This was no longer merely about reputation. Watching the unfolding reactions, she understood that she was unveiling something even deeper, the collective purpose they must all seek. A heavy silence filled the room, punctuated only by the soft hum of the overhead lights. Sarah's heart raced as she scanned the faces around her, searching for a flicker of courage in her colleagues' expressions. She had bared her soul, exposing her vulnerabilities in the hope of igniting a much-needed dialogue. Finally, Jenna broke the silence, her voice tremulous yet resolute. "I think we owe it to ourselves to discuss this. I can't shake the feeling that we're complicit in something really damaging." It was as if the spoken words melted the tension, and Sarah felt a rush of relief and gratitude. A small victory, but a pivotal moment nonetheless. When others began to reluctantly voice their agreement, Sarah's resolve strengthened. Each revelation seemed to peel away layers of fear and doubt, revealing an innate desire for change that had lurked beneath the surface. It made her wonder, had they been waiting for someone to take the first step, or had their silence been a willful choice? Nathan's expression darkened, the air around him thickening with palpable hostility. "You've started a movement, Sarah," he mused sarcastically, his tone laced with menace. "But movements can be crushed by those who hold power." His stance radiated threat, a calculated warning that weighed heavily on her, yet instead of shrinking back, Sarah held her ground. She recognized that retreating would only reinforce the very culture she sought to dismantle. "Then let us challenge that power," she said, her voice unwavering. "What happens when we choose to be afraid of what we cannot control?" This self-assertion marked a turning point. Each expression in the room morphed from hesitance to a cautious contemplation that captivated her. They were beginning to understand that standing at the precipice of discomfort was a necessary part of reclaiming their power. Clarity emerged amidst the chaos. The truth of their workplace dynamics was coming to light. Jenna took a step closer, emboldened by Sarah's words. "We can't allow ourselves to be manipulated by fear anymore. It's not just about us, it's about setting an example for what we believe in." The voices of others began to rise in quiet affirmation, the atmosphere transforming from one of dread to budding empowerment. Yet, an internal turmoil swelled within Sarah. She battled lingering doubts. Was this newfound momentum enough to confront the structure of power that Nathan embodied? And what would happen when they inevitably faced pushback? Shifting her focus back to the room, she honed in on her colleagues, urging them to confront the uncomfortable truths lurking within. "If we want to cultivate a healthy work environment, we first have to acknowledge the toxicity that exists. Only then can we begin to foster trust. She felt the weight of those words, like a call to arms echoing through her. As they began to band together, echoes of shared experiences surfaced, revealing deeper connections among her peers that had remained dormant for far too long. It was a revelation that ignited hope, each shared struggle destined to contribute to their collective resilience. Their confessions acted like stitches, repairing wounds that their unspoken fears had bruised. However, in the distance loomed the specter of Nathan's looming threat. Despite their fledgling unity, uncertainty clung heavily to her thoughts. Sarah knew that true resolve would require fortitude against not only Nathan's aggression but also the potential of fracturing the bonds just forming among her team. "Let us channel this into a plan," Sarah urged, confidence taking the place of fear like a cloak. "We need to gather our thoughts, build a case for change that can't be ignored." The response was electric. They began brainstorming ideas, energized by the spirit of collaboration. But even as they conjured strategies, Sarah could sense the weight of Nathan's impending sabotage. Would they have the strength to stand firm as a united front, or would Nathan's tactics sow deep division, shattering the fragile coalition they had begun to form? The question resonated within her, sharpening her resolve to not only defend her newfound sense of purpose but to deepen it. In that moment, a new realization dawned upon Sarah. The convergence of her personal strength with the collective courage of her colleagues could be the very catalyst for genuine transformation. Would they truly navigate this treacherous landscape together, or would doubt overshadow their strides toward change? As they brewed fresh ideas to empower their initiative, Sarah felt a pang of uncertainty twist within her. What if, in breaking the silence, they awakened a beast they weren't prepared to face? The clock ticked down toward confrontation, and it was a race against time. The atmosphere crackled with an electric tension as ideas flowed, each thought strung together with resolve. Names scrawled on a whiteboard flickered in and out of her consciousness, a parade of possibilities. Yet, despite this collective enthusiasm, Sarah could feel the heavy shroud of doubt creeping around the edge of her thoughts. Even as she focused on the camaraderie surging in the room, Nathan's menacing presence loomed darkly on her mind like a storm gathering strength. What if we framed our case not just as a critique but as a vision of what we want to achieve? Jenna's voice broke through Sarah's fog, pulling her back into the moment. It was a striking perspective, one that shifted the conversation from fear to hope, from speculation to action. "That's it," Sarah encouraged, feeling her heart begin to sync with the group's rising energy. "We can't simply address the problems, we need to illuminate the possibilities. What kind of work environment do we envision?" In that moment, a flicker of clarity ignited in Sarah's chest. They weren't merely fighting against Nathan's oppressive hold, they were advocating for a paradigm shift. But the fear lurking beneath that clarity was palpable. Could they truly alter the course set by years of fear-mongering and manipulation? As her colleagues began to articulate their dreams, ideas of transparency, mutual respect, shared responsibilities and undeniable sense of purpose solidified around Sarah. Their visions unfurled like the pages of a book, revealing the untold stories that had been silenced for so long. Yet, anxiety danced behind every ambition. Nathan would not yield his power easily. Sarah's introspection deepened as she listened. Each suggestion from her team was a reflection of her own despair and hope. How easily they shared their dreams, yet the risk of pushback from powerful adversaries struck fear into the heart of their plans. The foundation for trust was being built, brick by brick, but her mind oscillated between optimism and caution. "What next?" Sarah finally asked, her voice steadier than she felt. They needed a roadmap for implementation, a way to blend their aspirations with tangible actions while anticipating Nathan's blowback. "We can schedule individual meetings with other departments," Jenna suggested. "Build alliances." Sarah breathed in sharply, connecting the idea with memories of scattered lunchtime whispers in the break room. Each colleague had their own struggle, their own weight to carry. The thought of reaching out to other departments sparked something deeper within her, a growing conviction to create not just a safe space but a thriving ecosystem in which every employee felt valued. Suddenly, Sarah recognized a latent skill within herself. she had always excelled in networking scenarios, forging connections that others tended to overlook. What if they could collectively dismantle Nathan's power through sheer proliferation of unity throughout the organization? The strategy blossomed in her mind. And we can document shared experiences and support each other in those meetings. A coalition of care, she said, the words tasting sweet on her tongue. We need to present a tapestry of voices that showcase our collective desire for change. But as the ideas swirled through her thoughts, a knot tightened in her gut. Each step towards action felt like a step closer to confrontation, and the prospect of facing Nathan loomed unbearably. The weight of leadership cautioned her to tread carefully, to be fully aware that each decision could ignite a battle. As they gathered their ideas into a clear plan, Sarah felt that familiar pressure. The echo of Nathan's threat hovered over her like a cloud ready to unleash a storm. She glanced at her colleagues, hope and determination shining in their eyes. They were ready, but were they ready enough? The clock was ticking, and Sarah could sense the swell of expectations. The road to confrontation required them to be prepared for the worst. With every moment that passed, the need for clarity and courage intensified in her heart. Tomorrow, we go to every department and ask for support. We strategize for both voices of encouragement and possible pushback, she announced, each word a decisive step into uncertain territory. Just as she felt their collective resolve solidify, doubt crept back in. What if Nathan's retaliation was fiercer than they had anticipated? What if all that they had worked for unraveled under the weight of a single countermove? As the meeting concluded, Sarah held on to the fragile glimmer of hope in her chest, which now felt punctured by uncertainty. Tomorrow could mark the start of something meaningful or lead them directly into Nathan's claws. The moment was inching closer. What would they face when the inevitable confrontation began? The dawn arrived shrouded in an unsettling calm, a deceptive tranquility that Sarah found disorienting. As she made her way to her office, her thoughts ricocheted between anticipation and dread. Today was the day they would venture into the unknown and confront the very foundation of Nathan's authority. Each step felt heavier, the weight of the moment pressing down on her shoulders as if the air itself conspired against her. She settled at her desk, the chaotic rush of morning activity around her muted. Beneath the surface, she could sense the simmering tension, colleagues moving about with hushed tones, casting furtive glances towards her and Jenna. The sense of anticipation was palpable. They were aware that something transformative was brewing, and curiosity mingled with anxiety like live wires ready to spark. Her laptop sparked to life, but her fingers hesitated above the keys. Sarah took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus. She began drafting an email to the heads of other departments, carefully selecting words that conveyed both urgency and opportunity. Her heart raced as she hit send, each click echoing her resolve. Every message was an invitation to solidarity, a hope for alliances that could shift the tide against Nathan's looming presence. After a brief lull, Jenna knocked gently on Sarah's door, breaking her reverie. Ready? Nodding, Sarah felt a rush of adrenaline coursing through her. Together, they would approach their first department, the marketing team. As they walked toward the room, Sarah reflected on her newfound commitment. The flicker of leadership previously buried inside her had flared into a critical flame, pushing her forward into uncharted territory. Stepping into the vibrant workspace, they were met with warm smiles that quickly melted into curiosity. Sarah took a moment to observe. The marketing team was vibrant and enthusiastic, yet she sensed a shared undercurrent of unresolved tension. Today was not merely about outlining their visions, it was about reinforcing trust and reaffirming the strength they could derive from one another. Thank you for coming together so quickly, Sarah began, her voice quaking slightly, then steadied. We're on the precipice of something meaningful, and it starts with each of us having the courage to share our experiences. As she spoke, she noticed nods of agreement, and an emboldened sense of purpose surged within her. Stories began to emerge, tales of frustration with Nathan's micromanagement, the stifling of creativity, and the silent weariness that permeated every department. Each account served to deepen the resolve she felt growing inside her. The coalition of care was not a distant dream, but a concrete possibility. Time slipped away as the conversation blossomed, thoughts erupting like a power surge. Her network-building instinct flourished, She saw how connecting the dots among shared experiences created a stronger web of support. They outlined a plan to gather stories, turning individual fears into a collective narrative, a tapestry of resilience. However, even as the meeting closed, a sense of urgency twisted inside her. They were not simply opposed to Nathan, they were calling for a revolution within themselves, challenging not only his authority but the limitations they had accepted for so long. What if Nathan retaliated? What if he reached out to others ahead of them, spinning their stories to paint them as discontented malcontents? The work doesn't stop here, Sarah declared, her voice firm. We'll meet regularly. I'll set up times for us to share updates and strategize around Nathan's moves. As she left the meeting room, a knot of apprehension tightened in her stomach. Each interaction had clarified their purpose, yet she couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that they were now on a collision course with Nathan. She was aware that behind every confrontation lay potential heartbreak. Her phone buzzed against the desk, breaking her thoughts. It was an email from the HR department confirming a meeting for later in the day. The subject line read, "Request for discussion, recent team dynamics." It was an invitation she had not anticipated, and panic surged immediately. The time had come to engage not just with her colleagues but with the very institutions that supported Nathan's reign. Would they support her cause or side with the opposition? The reality of her vulnerability crashed in like a tidal wave. Emboldened by the morning but wary of the storm ahead, Sarah knew she was standing on the brink. Choices would define her journey, but was she ready to fully embrace the resistance, or would her courage falter when the moment of truth arrived? The hum of the fluorescent lights overhead felt oppressive as Sarah prepared for the meeting with HR. Each tick of the clock seemed louder than the last, reverberating in her mind like a warning. She straightened her blouse and looked in the mirror across the hallway, searching for the reflection that would convey confidence. Instead, she found uncertainty, a flawed image of a leader still learning to navigate this complex web of power dynamics. Minutes crawled by before she stood up to walk to the conference room. The polished floors beneath her feet mirrored the anxious knots inside her stomach, each step a tightrope act between courage and fear. She took a moment outside the door to breathe deeply, reminding herself of the importance of the moment. It was not just about confronting Nathan, it was about staking her claim in a narrative that was slowly finding its legs. As she entered, Sarah was met with a sea of expectant faces around the long table. The HR representative sat across from her, their expressions a mix of concern and curiosity. She could see that they were aware of the stories circulating in the halls yet appeared uncertain about whose side to take. Would they view her as a threat, or could they potentially support the winds of change she was hoping to ignite? Taking a seat, Sarah opened with a concise summary of recent events, her voice stronger than she felt internally. Recent interactions in the departments have sparked a notable decline in morale, she began, allowing her words to flow from a place of urgency rather than fear. I've witnessed how fear of micromanagement stifles creativity and leaves talented individuals feeling powerless. It was a bold articulation, but necessary. She had to establish her credibility. As the conversation unfolded, Sarah found her rhythm. The HR representatives listened intently as she detailed individual experiences, revealing a tapestry of creative minds dampened by Nathan's oppressive hand. Each voice she had collected from her colleagues transformed into a chorus, a sound that resonated with a frequency of shared frustration. She was not merely recounting grievances, she was presenting a compelling case for a new kind of leadership. A leadership that viewed its employees as allies rather than mere assets. For a moment, she even caught a glimmer of interest in one HR representative's eyes, and it fueled her fuel she desperately needed. But with every high, there came an inevitable low. As a question about the potential backlash from Nathan surfaced, self-doubt crept in. The room shifted, tension rising. What if they advised her to tread lightly? What if they encouraged her to submit rather than confront? How prepared are you to deal with potential repercussions? One representative asked, her tone both probing and cautionary. The question weighed heavily, and Sarah felt her breath catch momentarily. In that split second, the kernel of fear wanted to expand, but she took hold of it. I understand the risks. But staying silent is a risk in itself, one that I refuse to take any longer. Change is painful but necessary. The sun had edged further up the sky when the meeting finally concluded. Walking out of the room, Sarah felt both elated and vulnerable, exhilarated by her candor but fearful of Nathan's reaction. She had spoken with the authority she didn't know she possessed, yet still, the uncertainty of what came next loomed large. Had she taken a step toward emancipation or placed herself directly in the line of fire? Returning to her desk, the atmosphere felt charged not with anxiety but with a collective anticipation she could almost touch. More than ever, Sarah realized change was not just about leading. Sometimes it demanded a willingness to embrace the fallout. As she settled in, the weight of her decision felt heavier, shifting the course of her journey in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. She was on the cusp of a deeper self-discovery, but darkness shrouded the road ahead. With Nathan aware that something was brewing, the risk of confrontation loomed larger than ever. In that moment of reflection, an email alert pinged again, breaking through her thoughts. This one was from Nathan himself, the subject line reading, "Let's talk." Reality gripped her as she realized that this was no longer just a movement, it had become a battle of wills. The time for true confrontation was about to begin. The email felt like a lightning bolt, jolting Sarah from her moment of introspection. She brushed her fingers across the keyboard and opened the message, the words blurring as her heart raced. Nathan's tone was unerringly neutral, devoid of the usual bravado that typically characterized his communication. "Sarah, let us meet at 3 p.m. to discuss your recent comments. I'd like to hear your thoughts." Every inch of her body told her to hesitate, to spend the remaining hours strategizing her response. Instead, she plunged into work, diving into projects she had initially tucked aside. This was pivotal, wheels were set in motion, and retreat was no longer an option. The day dragged on, her mind oscillating between determination and what-ifs. At lunch, she joined a few colleagues, the atmosphere buzzing with chatter. They noticed her unease, their curiosity palpable as they probed her about the HR meeting. Sarah put on a facade of calm, sharing only the core details. "I took a stand. It was necessary." It felt good to declare it, and for the first time, the notion of being their voice felt like empowerment rather than risk. She returned to her desk with a renewed sense of purpose. The clock ticked closer to 3, a rhythm that seemed to sync with her pulse, each tick magnifying the significance of what lay ahead. Sitting in her chair, she practiced her breathing, envisioning the conversation that awaited. Would Nathan acknowledge the voices of others she highlighted? Or would he dismiss her concerns, doubling down on his approach? When the time finally came, she walked to Nathan's office, each step laden with intention. The glossy door reflected back a version of herself that was starting to feel unyielding. This confrontation was no longer merely about defending herself. The stakes had escalated, this was about accountability. Nathan sat behind his imposing desk, assessing her like a hawk. His expression remained unreadable, but Sarah detected a flicker of tension around his jaw. "I appreciate you coming in," he began, his voice steady. "Let us cut to the chase. I've heard some interesting things about your meeting with HR." Gritting her teeth, she braced for impact. "I stand by what I said. The team needs a leader who recognizes their potential rather than suppresses it." The words spilled out, each a reminder of her commitment to change and the people behind her. She saw a flash of something in his eyes, a mix of surprise and perhaps a hint of fear. "Do you have any idea who you're up against?" he countered, leaning in. His demeanor shifted from calm to confrontational, but she met his gaze with a confidence she hadn't realized was brewing inside. "I do," she replied, refusing to back down. "But this isn't about you or me. It's about creating an environment where people can thrive, and that's not happening with the current dynamic." Nathan's expression hardened, but she crossed a threshold. The moment felt thick with intensity, yet her clarity began to slice through the animosity. This was the empowerment she sought, a decisive step toward asserting her beliefs, her identity. For an instant, she sensed his resolve wavering. Was he genuinely contemplating her words, or merely plotting his next move? The air between them crackled with unsaid challenges, and she had the sudden urge to press further to expose the fractures in his authority rather than merely challenge it. Just as she contemplated her next words, he leaned back, schooled his features into a mask of composure, and said, "You think you can take me on? Think again. You're underestimating the power I wield." The confrontation had morphed from a discussion into a battle line drawn between them. Sarah understood that crossing this threshold would demand more than just words. It would require tenacity and a strategy beyond simply voicing her discontent. With her heart pounding and a myriad of thoughts racing through her mind, she took a deep breath, preparing for the most crucial moment in this standoff. "I may be confronting you now, but remember this isn't just my fight. It's the fight of many." Nathan's smirk faltered for the first time as apprehension danced across his sharp features. She could see his defenses rising, but uncertainty had crept in, a vulnerability she intended to exploit. Establishing her position felt liberating yet daunting. She had staved off the quiet unease that had once paralyzed her. But was she truly ready for what lay ahead? The confrontation had heated, and it was clear that both were unwilling to back down. With adrenaline surging, Sarah stepped away from the desk, the tension hanging heavily in the air. "This isn't just about power dynamics, Nathan. It's about respect, the kind you're not willing to give." She turned to leave, the door gliding closed behind her. Pride swelled within her as she recalled the way she had stood firm. Yet, the shadow of potential retaliation lingered over her like a storm cloud, casting an uncertain future. As she returned to her desk, her pulse racing, she silently vowed to face whatever consequences arose from this encounter. There was no turning back now. Determination ignited a fire inside her, but she was keenly aware, Nathan would strike back, and it was in that awareness that a new question formed in her mind. Was she prepared to defend her convictions against Nathan's inevitable retaliation? The battle of wills had truly begun, but Sarah was ready to face the storm head-on. A few days passed since Sarah's confrontation with Nathan, each morning marked by a ripple of tension coursing through the office. As the air thickened with anticipation, Sarah remained at the forefront of change, a role she had never envisioned herself stepping into. She sensed the energy had shifted, whispers of solidarity were beginning to echo in the halls. The first day of her new initiative arrived, with colleagues gathering for an informal meeting to discuss their shared grievances. The atmosphere buzzed with courage, a sense of camaraderie blossoming amongst them. As Sarah stood before her peers, it dawned on her how far she had come. Once weighed down by self-doubt, she now exuded a quiet confidence, fueled by collective determination. "We are here for change," Sarah proclaimed, her voice steady, cutting through the din of apprehension. "This isn't just about standing up for Claire anymore, it's about creating a workplace where every voice is valued. We've all felt the weight of fear, and it's time we lift each other." As she spoke, her words resonated with the frustrations that had long gone unaddressed. The colleagues around her nodded in agreement, their expressions shifting from ambivalence to resolve. With each shared story of struggle and resilience, the room filled with hope, paving a path toward transformation. One by one, they exchanged ideas on how to present their collective concerns to HR, building a strategy that would not only advocate for change but actively dismantle the culture of silence that had plagued their workplace for far too long. As they brainstormed, Sarah felt the power of unity weaving through them, binding their individual struggles into a formidable force. The moment they agreed on a date for their presentation to HR felt monumental. "We will articulate our vision for a healthier work environment," Sarah declared, her passion palpable. "Together, we will create a coalition not just for ourselves but also for future generations of nurses." As days passed and anticipation built towards the HR meeting, Sarah experienced an exhilarating sense of purpose, intertwining her personal growth with the professional salvation of her workplace. She recognized she wasn't only refining her identity but also creating a legacy of support and empowerment. The fear that had once clouded her judgment was being replaced by a fierce conviction that it was the day of the presentation. Arriving at HR, Sarah felt the weight of the moment propelling her forward. The conference room, usually intimidating, now felt like a crucible of positive change. The energy was palpable as her colleagues united beside her, their shared conviction amplifying her resolve. As she stepped in front of the panel, Sarah felt steady, her heart aligned with her purpose. Today, we are not just voicing our concerns, we are laying the foundation for a healthier workplace that embraces transparency, respect, and trust, she began, her voice unwavering. As the presentation unfolded, it amazed Sarah how the stories of her colleagues blended into a powerful narrative underscoring the need for change. Each individual spoke honestly, illuminating the shadows of unfair practices that had long remained hidden. They backed their claims with testimonials, a tapestry of experiences woven together into a compelling case for reform. The HR representatives listened intently, their expressions softening as the sincerity in the room unfolded like petals of hope. As Sarah's team concluded their presentation, there was a moment of silence, a shared breath encompassing their collective courage and vulnerability. Sarah's heart swelled with pride as she prepared to close the discussion. What we are asking for is simple: an environment that recognizes our individuality and nurtures our ability to flourish. We seek your support not just for us, but for everyone here who deserves to thrive. Each word felt like a step toward vindication, echoing with her promise to be the change she wished to see. As they left the room, a wave of relief washed over the group. They had stood up together and spoken out against fear. Sarah had transformed before their eyes from a bystander in her own story to a leader inspiring others to harness their strength. Days later, the verdict came. HR embraced the collective sentiments, promising a revamp of the workplace culture, initiating platforms where concerns could be addressed openly. Their unity and change saw fruition, and Sarah's heart brimmed with triumph, not just for herself, but for her colleagues. After years of feeling beneath the radar, she had finally proven her competence, one fueled by integrity and courage. As Sarah stood in the break room, her reflection in the glass now imbued with strength and presence, she embraced her new reality. The ghosts of self-doubt faded behind her, replaced by the solid foundation of recognition she had built through vulnerability and collective effort. Having conquered the battle for her voice and values, Sarah now radiated confidence, an internal compass guiding her through the complexities of her professional world. She not only emerged victorious, she transformed into an embodiment of empowerment, creating ripples that would inspire others for years to come. This victory was her collective triumph over personal obstacles, an evolution rooted in a heart filled with purpose and commitment. Walking alongside colleagues transformed into allies, she was finally recognized as not just a nurse but a leader, one ready to usher in a new era of integrity and respect. Now, as you reflect on Sarah's incredible journey of growth and empowerment, it's time to summon your own courage. This is your moment. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire rapid transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, ensuring these powerful narratives reach those who need them most. Comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's remarkable journey. Lastly, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this profound conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to show your support. Your engagement is the fuel that drives such inspiring tales.